All right then, so now what we are going to do is let's get back to our page.tsx and scroll it all the way to the bottom right after this. Okay, so this is the place where we are going to design the container layout. Okay, so here now what we need to do, I'm going to create a division which is going to be a grid, and by default it's going to have the grid column as 1, but once from the medium device onwards it should divide the grid column to 2. Okay, and gap between each and everything is going to be 6, and margin top I'm going to add some uh, layout gap. Okay, I need some gap over here. Okay, so now we have this. Then I'm going to create a div, and inside this I'm going to say title, because this is for the left section and this is for the right section. So in the first section we are going to bring the title, so div class name flex item center, and gap x it's going to be 2. I need to bring the icon batch. Okay, so now what we need to do is, so if you look at over here, this it's going to be the same reusable component. So we need to make this as well as the same reusable component. So we are going to create ourselves separate an icon badge component. So what we need to do is, over the components folder over here I'm going to say icon badge dot tsx. All right, so now just exactly the same way what we did, we need to bring these two things, copy it and put it over here. Then we need to get those icons, whatever the icons which is necessary, from where, from the lucid react icons, which is going to be the lucid lucid icon itself. Yeah, lucid icon itself. So basically this lucid icon, it's not any specific vector icons, because lucid icon, it is the type to make sure the value whatever I'm typing, sending through the property, that is the type as an icon, to make sure that this is the type to pass it as a reference, because that we are passing an icon as a reference. So whatever the reference that you are getting inside, it is not a string, it is an icon type. That's the reason we are using that one. Okay, so you'll understand by that time. Now what we need to do is const background variance equals to, we need to create two different things, one background variance and another one is the icon variance. So CVA, open it. So it is going to be, the styles are going to be something like this. It should have that rounded full flex, everything should be in the center. Then right after that we need to supply the variance, and the supply the variant. First one, it's going to be the default variant, which is going to have bg purple 100. So make sure that is doesn't have any spelling mistakes, because if you are making any spelling mistakes, the styles will never work. So please make sure that is not, that you're not making any spelling mistakes. Then right after here, the size, for the default we need to have the padding as 2. Then for smaller size we are going to have the padding as 1, something like that. That is going to be the styles for the what, the size. Okay, then now we need to supply the default variance. Over here we need to supply the default variance. So the default for the variant, I'm going to supply the default as a default one. Then size, I'm going to supply the default one as the default value. All right, now let's go ahead and create the icon variance. So const icon variance is equals to CVA, open it. There is no size, default size, open it. And here I'm going to create the variance, open it. Then variant, open it. For the default and the success, the icon should have the text color, right? So for that we having the text color, save it. And right after here we need to have the size property also. For the size we need to supply the default and the smaller size. For those, this is how it's going to be, save it. And we need to fix the default values. So using the default variant, for the variant prop I'm going to send the default value, and for the size prop I'm going to send the default as the default value. All right, cool. Now we have the icon variants and the background variants. So let's start mapping the type. So for the background type, background variant, background variant props is equals to variant props of what? For the type of the background variant prop. Okay, then type icon variant props is going to be variant prop, which is going to be the type of icon variants. Save it. Now we can use these two props where inside this interface icon badge props, which going to extends two other properties, background variant props and as well as the icon variant props. Along with that, I'm going to supply the icon, which is going to be the lucid icon type. Save it. Now let's go ahead and create RAFC, and let's keep this as icon badge, and I don't need this import statement, and it is going to use the props from where icon badge props, which is going to have icon, and I'm going to use it as an icon as a component, then variant, then size. This variant and size are coming from these two separate variant props, which we defined separately over the top. Okay, now inside here what we are going to do is let's create a div class name, which is going to be, we need to use the cn function, cn, open it, and I'm going to use the background variant. I'm going to call that function, and I'm going to supply the properties. So I'm going to supply the variant as well as the size property. Based on that, the entire outer division should looks like, and inside I'm going to supply the icon, which is going to have a class name, and for this class name also you need to supply the cn function, open it. I'm going to supply the icon variants. For that also I need to supply the variant, whatever the variant that you are passing in. Save it. All right, now let's get back over here. I'm going to bring the icon batch. Okay, so let's make sure that it's been imported. All right, so now what we need to do is, for this I'm going to supply the icon. So icon, which is going to be the layout dashboard. So I can supply the variant, whatever the variant I want to display, I can supply. Otherwise it will defaultly take the default value. Look at that. Now it is taking this default value. So in case if I am sending this value as variant as what? As success, this is how it looks. So you can change, we can use this icons whenever we needed it. Okay, that's the reason we are creating this as the reusable one. Now we have the icon. Then what I need to do, I need to have an #2 tag, and here I'm just going to say customize your job, and for this #2 tag, class name text excel and text neutral 700, something like that. Look at that. Just like the exact same way what we do have over here. And then right after this division, this is the place where we need to bring the title form. Okay, so that is what we are up to create now, title form. And for the title form, we need to supply the initial data, which is going to be your entire job itself. Then we can send the job ID as a separately job.id. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the title form now. Inside this job components folder, I'm going to say title-form.tsx. All right, let's go ahead and create the title form now. Okay, so let's make sure this title form is as the client form, and then let's say RAFC, RAFC, that's the title form, and I don't need anything else. Save the changes, and let's import it for the time being. Save it. So you will get this issue The reason is because we don't have any props over here. So let's go ahead and create that props and everything. So what we need to do is interface title form props, open it. Okay, so we are going to bring the initial data. So please make sure these two are exactly the same. Initial data, which is going to be title alone, because we are going to bring the title alone. I don't need the entire stuff from the job. I need the title alone, nothing else. All right, then I'm going to bring the job ID, which is going to be the string, and I'm going to expand it from where? From the title form props. I'm going to get the initial data and as well as the job ID. Now you should not get any error over here, no type errors from there. So now we have those values and everything. So now next, what I need to do in order to keep it as a form, okay, see what I need to do is I need to get the form schemas and everything. So let's go ahead and create the form schemas first. So right after here, const form schema is equals to z. So we need to get this object from where it is being imported from the Zod. Make sure that is imported from the Zod, and object, open it. And inside here, I'm going to bring the title. Oops. Make sure the title is being not imported any specific packages. It should be an object. So z.string, open it, and it should have the minimum value of one particular string. All right. Fine though. Okay, if you wish to give any custom message over here, supply the custom message like what title is required, something like that. Okay, now we have the form schema. So we need to create the custom state, whether we are editing the form or not, and we need to have the router object as well as to reroute the user. So I'm going to bring this use state and as well as this use router from where? From the next navigation. So save this. Okay, this state is for us for what? For making sure whether we are in an editing state or not. Okay, then right after here we need to get the form. So const form is equals to use form. Make sure that is being imported from React hook form, open it. And I need we need to set the type. So z.infer, it's going to use the type of what? The form schema which we created. Then inside this form, I'm going to use the resolver, which is going to be the Zod resolver. Make sure that is being imported properly from where? Hooks, at hooks resolver Zod. Then supply your form schema in it, because that is the form elements that it need to be validated. Then I need to supply the default values. The default values, of course, it's going to be the initial data, which is going to be your title. All right. So next, what I need to do, I need to get two different values, const form dot form state. From the form state, I need to access the two different values, whether the form is submitting the values or not, or the form values is valid or not, to monitor those two different states. All right, then I need the function. What function that we need? Const on submit function, which is going to be a callback function, and of course that function is going to be an asynchronous function, and it's going to get the values, and this is going to be a specific type, which is nothing but z.infer and using the type of the form schema. Now these values will match this form schema object values. So save these changes. Cool. Now, okay, we need to monitor this state. So if I click this form, you can see it is showing two different, that we have the two different states, right? So for the toggling, we need to have a function. So whether we are editing or not. So to check that toggling, I'm going to create a function, const toggle editing as a callback function. So this function is going to say set is editing. It's going to update the state. So I'm going to get the current value from it. Then I'm going to assign it to not the current value. If it is already in editing, it's need to update, not change the value is not editing, right? So if it is already true, set it false. If it is false, set it true. That is what we are trying to do here. That's the duty of that function. Okay then, so now what we need to do is, let's start customizing this division over here. So for this, let's say class name. So from the margin top, I'm going to push it a little bit down. Then I need a border. Then BG, of course, it's going to be neutral 100. And of course, it should be rounded medium, and padding inside, I need to have some padding. So now you should be able to see that it's having some nice UI over there. All right, so inside this division, I'm going to create one more div, which is going to have a class name of font. Of course, it need to be a medium font. Okay, then it should be flex item center justify between. Inside here, I'm going to have this job title like that. Then I'm going to bring a button, and this button is going to have on click, it's going to have that toggle editing function. We are going to call that function, and please make sure that is being imported properly. Add components UI button, and inside this button, now this button is going to variant, of course it's going to be the ghost variant. And now over here, so if it is editing, if it is that you are click editing, then what you need to display over here, you need to display the text as cancel. If you are not editing, that means you need to ask the user to start the editing. So which is going to be a pencil icon, class name, width 4, height 4, and margin right, it's going to be 2. And right after here, I'm just going to say edit title, just like that. So now if I click this, it is going to be cancel. If I click this, it's going to show the edit title. All right, now the top section is being done. So right after here, next we need to display the value. If the user is not in editing mode, I need to display the default title over here. So what we need to do, display the title if not editing. So I'm going to say if not editing, if the user is not editing, then only it's need to be rendered. So what we are going to render, I'm going to render a paragraph tag over here, which is going to display that title itself. From the initial data, I'm going to get that title, and I'm going to display that value. And for this paragraph, class name, text sm, and margin top, it's going to be 2. Save the changes like this, sample job. Then right after here, when it is on editing mode, we need to display the input tag. So on editing mode, display the input. So over here, so we need to check if it is editing. If it is editing, then what? Then we need to display the form. Open the form from where add components UI, enter. And here what we need to do, we need to destructure the form. So please make sure the form is being imported from where add components UI. Okay, so last time we made that mistake, so don't make the same mistake again. So form, and we don't need the action. So for this on submit event, we need to handle our form.handle submit event by passing our submit function as a reference, just like that. Then for this form, we are going to have a class name space y4. It's going to be having some space. Then from the margin top, it's going to be 4, enter. Okay, so now inside this, I'm going to bring the form field from where add components UI form, and make sure there is a self-closing tag. Okay, now for this, you need to supply the required properties. So first one, which is going to be the control, of course it's going to use the form.control. Then you need to supply the name of the field, which is going to be the title itself, which is coming from our form schema. Then we need to render a field inside by creating a value rendered property, extract the field from that object. Then inside here, I need to supply the form item, which is coming from add components UI itself. Then I need to supply the form control. Then inside here, I need to supply the input, which is coming from add components UI itself. For this input, I needed to supply disabled. It's need to be disabled whenever is submitting. Whenever the form is submitting, the field needs to be disabled. Then the placeholder, which is going to be example as full stack developer, something like that. That is how the placeholder needs to be. Then we need to destructure the field object to send the value into our form elements. And right after the control, I need to display the form message in case if there is any issues or anything, if the user typing, clicking the save option without saving the details, without having any value in it. Okay, so now this is fine. And right after here, I need to bring the class name flex item center and gap x, it's going to be 2. Inside here, I'm going to bring a button and I'm going to say save, and this needs to be disabled. When it's need to be disabled, if it is the form value is not valid or if the form is being submitted, it's need to be disabled. Then the type of this button, of course, it's going to be the submit. Save these changes. Now if you click edit, you should be able to see the sample job, and along with that it's having its value. Now I can able to change these values and everything. Now all we have to do on click, I need to save this function. So what I'm going to do is inside the title form, this is the place where we are going to get the value. So let's say inspect the elements and let's say console. Okay, now if I save it, okay, so I haven't console.log, and let's check it out whether it is printing the values or not. Save it. Now if I click this, you should be able to see that value it's been printing, which means it's working perfectly fine. Okay, so now we are going to create an API in order to make sure that it's working perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the try and catch over here. If there is any error is happening, we need to say toast.error and something went wrong. Maybe if there is any error, we can do the console log and let's check it out. So console.response is equals to await Axios, which is from our Axios package itself, dot patchwork. In this case, now we are going to use the post. We already do have the post API for our jobs. We need to create the patch API now. So which is going to be dynamic string literals slash API. It's going to be jobs. It's going inside the jobs, and inside that we are going to use the job ID. We are going to supply the job ID. Then we are going to supply the values from the form, whatever we do have. If everything is being updated, then what we are going to say toast dot success, like job updated. Then we need to disable the toggle editing, call that function, because we are already in the edit mode and we need to bring back to the non-editing mode. Then we need to say router.refresh. Okay, so because we need to fetch the updated data and we need to display it, right? That's the reason. All right, fine. Now it is working. Now it should work perfectly. Now let's get back over here and let's update our API. Okay, so this case, let's go here. Let me open the API folder inside the, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this job ID exactly the same, and inside these jobs, right click, create a new folder, make it as a square bracket and paste it. Inside this job ID folder, create a new file called route.ts. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to copy and I'm going to paste it over here. In this case, instead of post, this is going to be the patch, and right over here this is also going to be the patch. And we need the one more thing, which is going to be your, because on through the front end, if you check it out over here, we are passing the ID, so we need to get that ID from the parameter. So I'm gonna get the params instance, and which is going to be the type of params itself. Inside this params, I'm gonna get that job ID, which is going to be the string. Okay, so save these changes. Okay, so now inside here, what I need to do is const equals to params. From the params, I'm gonna access the job ID. So what I need to do is, if there is no user ID or if there is no job ID itself, ID, we need to say ID is missing, something like that. If there is no title, of course we are going to get that. And then what we need to do is, what we can say is, so instead of getting the title directly like this, mm, 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 mm. So now here what we need to do is, so basically this post function is ready to update the title alone, but in this case this patch function needs to update any property whatever we are sending through it. So what we need to do is, instead of getting the title alone, I'm gonna get the updated values separately over here, values, and I don't need this title needs to be checked, and instead of this data property directly over here, and I'm just going to say updated values directly like this. Okay, either you can supply the objects directly like this, or what we can do is you can directly open it, or you can simply destructure these updated values, something like this. Both will work perfectly. Okay, in this case I'm going to supply this as an updated values. All right, so let's check it out whether everything is working perfectly or not. Let me click the network and close this and change this. Let me change this to full stack developer, something like this. And now if I click save, it should call, okay, we are running into an internal server error. What is that issue? It's calling API slash jobs 68. Okay, so now we should get the error. Okay, title argument user ID is missing. Okay, it's trying to get the user ID, update the user ID. What is the best way is destructure it, then send it. That's it. That's a mistake because we don't have the user ID. So if you click this, oh my god, so it's just a Blender mistake. What we made is, this is supposed to be an update. That is supposed to be an update function, not an create function. That's the Blender mistake we made. So job update, that's the thing happen when you are trying to copy and paste. Please be very careful. It should be update where what we are trying to update, where the ID it's going to be the job ID and the user ID, of course it's going to be the same. Then along with that I need to send the data, which is going to be your updated values. Extract, destructure it. Now I hope it should work. Now let me clear this. If I click this, we are getting the message as job as updated, and if you check it at the network, okay, and yeah, look at that, here we go. So it's displaying the updated value. So if you go and check in your MongoDB now, if I refresh it, and here we go, see, full stack developer, it's working perfectly. So now if I get this ID, and now if I supply that ID over here, so it's having test job. So let me clear the network over here. Let me click edit and let me change this as UI developer. And if I click save, it's showing that it's got the 200 message. It's say it's updated that UI developer. And if I get back to the MongoDB, oops, if I get back over there and if I refresh it, you should able to see the second object updated to UI developer, which is working perfectly fine. So we successfully finished the title form, and next we have to go ahead and finish the rest of the stuff, and that's what we are going to do next.